Hey everyone, this is the re-show series where I go back and have a look through the archives of all the Synth Geekery episodes. We've got about 6 years almost of them, and this one goes back to episode 148, and I asked the question, what can you do with a monosynth? And Daren, Andy and me get together, and this is the little snippet. Sit back and enjoy. What can you do with a monosynth is the topic, and there's a few old sayings out there like, oh, monosynths, you know, you can only own so many, and then you've kind of they just get a little bit boring, and I don't know. I kind of think they are more than one trick pony. What do you guys think? Before we get into what I've prepared, I just thought we'd do a round table, starting with you, Brooksy, because you've got a few monosynths there.
Yep.
What's your thoughts on this?
When I first started getting into synthesizers, I didn't realize that they were monophonic. That was the first thing. So when I went down to Music Ground in Doncaster and checked out a synth, and it only played one note, I was like, "What? Only one? That's ridiculous." And I ended up leaving with a Krumar string synth because you could play chords on that. Which I wish I still had that Krumar, if I'm honest. But then I had a sort of moment of awakening and realised that, well, hang on a minute, a flute only plays one note, a clarinet only plays one note, a saxophone only plays one note. One note isn't necessarily a bad thing. So, and then I went and I picked up my first monosynth, and I've talked about my first monosynth before. It was a Tysco 60F, which again I really wish I still had because that thing is amazing. Right, so I mean, to be honest with you, I think it's the best single oscillator monosynth that I have ever heard, really, and I wish I still had it. Well, I mean, you think about monosynths, I've got obviously there's the beastie behind me, the Pro One. But what else have I got? I've got the Novation bass station rack. Well, I haven't got it. Kent's got it, but I've got a bass station rack. I had an SH101, which I love dearly. I've replaced that with the SH018, which I know can play four notes, but I hardly ever do. It's an SH101. I've got the TD3, the Model D in the rack, the Behringer Pro One in the rack. I absolutely love them. I've got no problem with that, because I've got polysynths elsewhere and I know what they do. And yeah, I mean, you just use it. I was thinking about this morning, and actually a monosynth can be extraordinarily expressive. And you know, I mean, Grace is in the chat. Grace Griffin in Chillage People, we had monosynths. They were solo instruments played, and we used them all the time. Okay, we had chord instruments too, but the just using them for that and playing lead lines and just using the actual hands-on control to bring in that expressivity was part of it. And I love them to bits. I don't see them as limited. Of course they are, but those limitations force you to you work within those, and they all have their own characters and personalities, and sometimes you've got to dig a bit to get to them, but that's part of the joy.
Definitely. Well, Daren, same question to you, because you've got quite a few monosynths as well. What's your thoughts on this?
Probably a bit more like Andy would say, really. I like monosynths. I mean, I haven't got that many, to be honest. I've got a couple. But, I mean, the way I work anyway, I just getting sounds, whether it be mono or being able to polyphon, it doesn't really matter. But a monosynth, I like monosynths. They're great. I think they're easy. They make it easy, especially the really simple monosynths, where you know it's just basically one knob per function. You can create so much with just one note and one oscillator. It's amazing what you can actually do with them, as you're going to demonstrate.
Well, maybe.
I mean, I did a track a while back, didn't I? With just the Korg mono. What was it? Yeah, the monologue. I did a track just with that. I mean, I did end up using drums in the end. I did replace the drum sounds with actual drum samples, but the whole track, basically effects and sounds and everything, was done with just that one mono synth. So yeah, so you can do a lot with just one single mono synth. It's only stopped by your imagination, really. A few effects. You can always need a few effects, no matter what mono synth you've got. You always want some effects, but
True.
on the whole, yeah.
Right.
You definitely need an effect, I would say.
Well, I think some good points there. One of the things, one of the things I had prepared for today is, and I was showing it earlier in the stream, is we've got the Moog Slim Fatty here. Now, there's so many mono synths that we could have chosen. Even in my studio, I've got quite a lot of them. But I chose this one only because this one's got some challenges. So even from a mono synth point of view, there's definitely other mono synths that I could have chosen where there's a lot more features that are more easily accessible than on here. So I chose this one because it's more challenging. And even, talking about this today, we had Cresed saying earlier that he thought it would be difficult for me to make a hi-hat sound, and we made one already. So the first thing I kind of wanted to do is just show you kind of what my ideology behind monosynths are. And I have a few, and it's going to encompass all of these. And that is, I'm going to use a DAW to help me because we are musicians. We have to have a tool which we can record our music in and things like that. But the benefit of having a DAW is that we can record clips of our monosynths, or tracks if you like, and we can also manipulate the sounds out of the monosynth in various ways. So the first thing I wanted to show you guys is the drum rack, because being a Slim Fatty, you'd probably think to yourself, well, it's not really a drum machine. Well, you'll be surprised. So let's see if we can get some drum sounds out of it. We've got, what have we got here? Kick. We've got the bit more of a deeper kick. You guys can hear this, right? Tell me if you can.
It's coming through.
Good. There's my snare. I've got that really quiet, so I'll be quiet while I'm doing it. Actually, while I'm doing it, what I might do is grab this other mouse and make this loud so you can hear it. So there's my snare. It's kind of a tappy sound. And then we've got a hat. And so it's like a closed and open hat sounds. Right, so we can get some sort of drum beat. Not bad, hey? From the Slim Fatty. What else can we do? Resequencer. Or just have kick.
Nice.
And then you can start adding some other sounds in, like this. Now I've added effects to this because we're musicians. We want to add effects. This is not about just the raw sounds of a monosynth. We are trying to show what you can do with one, right? So add your effects. These are effects based in Ableton. Okay. And as we can keep going with stuff. Let me just close some of these off. I've got like a droney sound over here. So I've just gone through and made all these different sounds out of the synth. And basically what we're going to do is get some sounds happening and add some sequence to it.
hands.
It is, yeah. We can tune it though. So that's a sample. There it is there. So we can tune that. So where are we? Sample, and we can detune it. Let's have a look at something here. Let's look at Juno. It's not out of tune. It's pretty good.
Very clever.
Right, now go back to what we're doing. Okay, so one of the other things that I wanted to do is, this is really kind of easy. You can make chords now because we've sampled one sound and we can make chords. So we've now turned the mono synth into a polyphonic synth. Right? And it's just using a sampler. You might think to yourself, well, that's not a mono synth, it's a sampler. Well, we're using the mono synth, and what can you do with the mono synth is the question. The next thing I wanted to do was I wanted to create some funky stuff. And let me just press stop here. So let's go to opening up this key group. And the first one thing I started with is, let's turn this off, is I started with a kind of a slow wave sound, which is this sample here. So that's the slow wave sound. Now I've mucked around with it a little bit in Ableton using, you know, some MIDI effects. So I've got the mod wheel affecting volume and the aftertouch affecting filter frequency in there. So it's only slightly mucking around with it. But I wasn't quite happy with that sound on its own. I wanted to add a bit of an attacky sort of transient sound at the start. So I've added this sharp stab sound to it as well. So you get this. So now you're building, there's two slim fatty sounds together. But I wasn't really kind of stopping there. I kind of decided to myself, how far can I go with using the features of a DAW and the sounds of a monosynth? And I thought, I wonder if I can get a square sound in here, but arpeggiate it and follow the chords. And I'm doing this in just one key group here. So let's see what this sounds like. So that sounds kind of raw on its own. But when you bring that in with everything else, sort of gives chord changes and movements to what you're doing here. You can obviously add that other sound we had in, the brassy sound as well if you want to. And you can just layer your tracks up. And eventually you can build yourself a track with just one monosynth. And that is basically as far as I got with it. I just thought I'd just show you what is possible. And there's so many more sounds. We were playing around with them before, there's so many more sounds that you could do with this thing. Like, for example, we were doing this sound before. This is actually the Moog now playing live. So you could sample that, sequence it, and then you've got like a little TB303 sound going through it. This is kind of what I mean. What can you do with a monosynth? It's not just limited to one sound and then it's a one-trick pony. You've got to park it over in the corner and that's all it can do. Everything that I did in Ableton just there, maybe apart from the key grouping stuff, which kind of is a little bit more complex, you could probably do on an NPC or you could probably do on an Akai Force. Actually, you probably could do the key grouping things with two different key groups now that I think about it. But yeah, so for me, it's more about using the synth more to its strengths as opposed to thinking that it can only do one thing. That's kind of where I was coming from. Thoughts, guys?
Well, that's basically how I work
Sounds
in
really
my
cool.
studio, because that's yeah. Sorry, Andy.
No, you carry on, Daren.
Oh no, I was just going to say that's basically how I work in the studio. Everything's just used a bit like as if it was a mono synth. I just basically use all my studio as a sound source and then put things together either in my head and then into a track or like actually comes out as a track and then I just finish the final bit in the box. So yeah, it's pretty much how I write all my stuff, Rands. Go on, Andy, what were you saying?
Nice.
I was just saying it sounds really good. It was interesting about the sampling because way back before I bought a MIDI to CV converter, that's what I used to just create a sound and sample it onto the W30 and play it. And actually, another thing that I did was sample. Again, this is like a Jamie Geosynth thing of sampling the waveforms. So I sampled just I think 2 or 3 octaves, just not every note, just sort of like a C, a G, C, G, just the up sort of 3 octaves and make a multi-sample of that. Because a simple waveform is easy to loop, almost seamless without much effort. So you could create that and then using the W30's filters and envelope generators and stuff to basically as a synth. And yeah, you could get all sorts of great stuff out of it. And I think become lazy because you can just turn to the Supernova here or other polysynths and do that. And actually, you get a sort of different sort of sound. I think it's a really interesting way of approaching it.
Yeah, it definitely is. And the fact that you were using the S30 back in those days, pretty much the same way as what I was just using Ableton for. It's not a new technique.
I mean, we're talking about 1 second of. You could do it in like 0.4 second samples. That was the smallest sample you could actually take at first. So just take half a dozen of those, and then you've got 2 seconds of your 15-second sample time. You don't have to have it at high bandwidth either. You could have it at whatever 15 kilohertz or something, and then you just loop it. You don't need a long sample of a square wave or a sawtooth wave to be able to get a good loop point, which would then just loop seamlessly. That was easy. That it would pick those up really quickly. So it didn't take up a lot of memory, but you've got a source for creating lots of different sounds as you would with a synthesizer then. Perhaps not the most cutting edge of sampling techniques, but it served me well.
So one of the things that this kind of led me to was, and I noticed there was quite a few people in chat already mentioning this, and it's no wonder because it's a common thing, and that is to challenge yourself to a one synth challenge. It doesn't have to be a monosynth, but keeping it on topic for today, let's make it a monosynth. Challenge yourself to a one synth challenge, but I want people to, if you want to get better at being a synthesizer player and knowledge about synthesis, challenge yourself to a one synth challenge is a really, really good way of doing it. And That way, if you're making a whole track, a whole song, not just one track, a whole song, you can multi-track record your one synth and find all these different sounds. Like you heard how vastly different those Slim Fatty sounds were. Some of them don't even sound like Slim Fatty sounds, and they are. Every single one of them were. And challenge yourself to that, and I think you'll find that you'll get to know that synth better as a result of just doing that. It might take you just out for an afternoon, like maybe on your Sunday, do that in the afternoon. It's actually really enjoyable.